good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coast to Coast. We got Pags out on assignment today, and of course, McLovin will be here in the second hour. So I have a guest coming in. You've seen him before on my Pick'em show, a writer for Big Cat Country, Jaguars game day analyst for A7BN Sports, and of course, a co-host of the Duval Dive Podcast. And you can see us together every Tuesday night on Inside the Pigskin for the South Florida Tribune. Help me bring back my guy, Travis D. Holmes.
Ooh, thank you for having me, man. I need to have you do like all my intros. That was great. Thank you.
How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing well, man. It's the we're on groundhog watch right now. Because down here in Florida, it's been a hellish winter of having 40-degree temperatures some nights. Oh my gosh. So I'm ready for this Florida heat to get back, and I can get up in my 80s and 90s. Why I moved here in the first place.
40 degrees. That's some of our daytime highs. So, I don't feel bad for you, but
Nah, man, I'm not. I know why I moved to Florida. I know this is the temperature that I need in my life. So no, I need to get back to that. That's all.
no, I'm with you there. I'm with you there. It's this time of year that I miss living in Mexico because right now it's 82 and awesome. And
Yeah.
Currently here in Seattle, it is raining and 43.
Oh, I mean, isn't it always raining? That's what I was told.
I mean, it rains a solid amount this time of year for sure.
Okay. Okay.
We have beautiful summers though. Like you really can't beat a Northwest summer because everything stays green, right? It'll be upper 70s, low 80s, and sunny.
Oh,
And we got lakes everywhere. It's pretty awesome, pretty awesome. But
okay. So I got to put together a visit. That's what I'm hearing from this. I got you.
absolutely, absolutely. A beautiful area. Don't come in November. It is going to be windy, rainy, and gray. So anytime you see a picture of Seattle and it's raining and gray, a lot of times that is the early part of winter here.
Oh, I got you. I mean, it's still better than hurricane season. That's the end of our, insurance rates going up season. So I got you.
There is no doubt. All right, man. So we got to talk about your team.
Oh,
I know
man.
you're not excited about this topic.
You know me well.
We're just going to go ahead and start with what I just want to call as the collapse, right? You start 8-3. And, we were talking about, down the stretch and you're like, there's no way they missed the playoffs. You were super confident about it. And I was with you. Right? They had a couple of games that you're like, okay, those are probably L's based on how they were playing. And then they had 2 games where you're like, there's no way they lose those games. And
the timing matters, right? The timing of when we had that conversation was before.
Sure.
It was after the San Francisco demolition tour, we'll call that, coming out of the bye week, but it was before they had played a backup quarterback, for the Bengals, Jake
Browner,
Browning. This is before the Joe Flacco game. This is before all these collapses that, frankly, I saw the Jaguars having, and I even said it to you the last time we talked about it. That I saw the Jaguars having some, I don't know what to call it, mortal wounds, some super serious issues that would stop them from being a solid team in the playoffs, and that was right.
Yeah.
And other teams seem to see the same thing. If you can see how the Jaguars lost those games. However, what I didn't see, I didn't see Christian Kirk getting injured. Like, I mean, obviously you can't foreshadow injuries. I didn't see it causing that much of a situation with the offense. I didn't see Trevor Lawrence going through 4 injuries in 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And I didn't see, all those other issues still becoming, being the same issues as far as the defense, as far as, I mean, just across the board. There was so much. You could write a book about everything that happened in the Jaguars' last 7 games, and it was just a mess. It was tragic. For sure.
I mean, full on implosion. There is no doubt.
The Jacksonville Jaguars in 2023 were the Tennessee Titans in 2022. It's almost nearly exactly what happened. Like, some super serious injuries at all the wrong positions. You have some of your smaller issues becoming huge issues because everything's tight. Everyone's playing tight. Everyone has to play perfect, and it just broke out in a very ugly way. And then after everything's said and done, they end up firing nearly the entire defensive staff, sans 2 individual coaches. Honestly, they end up improving and hiring Ryan Nielsen from the Atlanta Falcons. and I honestly will say that that was a major improvement overall. But in the way that the defensive coaching staff was fired, and knowing that that probably wasn't even close to the top two issues on the team, that kind of it left a bad taste in a lot of Jags fans' mouths at the end of the season, knowing that the GM wasn't one of those people that got fired, nor the offensive line coach.
Yeah, I mean, the line definitely had an issue, and it led to some of, Lawrence's turnovers. Certainly the fumbles. There was a lot of fumbles.
Right. He fumbled at the same rate as Lamar Jackson, while also throwing interceptions at the same rate as Josh Allen, and not putting up the amount of touchdowns as either one of those guys. That's a bad combination.
It was impressive. Yeah,
right.
21 total turnovers, 7 of them fumbles. Like, man, that is a tough way to win games, especially when, let's be honest, the defense wasn't amazing, right? Even when they were playing okay, like they came up short in bad times.
So earlier in the season, when the Jaguars were at 1.8 and 3, 8 and 4, even when they were playing well, they were a middle of the pack defense overall.
Exactly.
And they were top 3 in the league and top 4 in the league at 2 different points in turnovers. And even last year, they were 4th in the league in turnovers, tied with the Buffalo Bills. So like, this is something that they were good at, just getting turnovers, and that saved them statistically as a defense. But if you don't get the turnovers, as what started happening later in the season, all of a sudden that's average defense now looks really, really rough, and it can't stop anyone. Can't stop a sneeze, and it became a real problem. And that stinks. But again, they went through some injuries, and if you were to ask some of the defensive coaches or former defensive coaches, they will tell you that the problem's still in the building. You've seen the reports from Justina Anderson. You've seen all the other reports talking about the implosion of the defense in the locker room and the staff, etc. They'll tell you that the problem is the GM. They'll tell you that they didn't have the players, that they went through the injuries, and that the issues they were working around those issues the first half of the season, and then they just eventually, with the injuries, what happened, but it's not them. They were just working. They're chefs in the kitchen working with subpar ingredients, essentially.
Sure, but I mean, I feel like it falls on coaching too. I mean, you can't, like, everybody that's in the league deserves to be in the league, right? Like, it's not like there's scrubs out there. So, I mean, at some point, you have to adjust your scheme to put the players that you have in better situations.
Oh, believe me when I tell you, I'm not making the sales pitch for those former coaches. But I'm telling you, if you were to ask those former coaches,
sure,
as I have, that's likely what they would let you know. And obviously, everybody has their own opinion. I'm not going to say that they think as a group thing. I haven't talked to every single coach, but I've talked to a few. And yeah, that's my general understanding is they don't feel that they had the dogs in those certain key positions to keep the linebackers clean as far as scraping. Like, the defensive tackles didn't have very great play. So basically both lines, the defensive line and the offensive line, were both just serious problems. But that was a key problem for the Jaguars. You can't stop anyone from running the ball. Then it makes you have to do things you don't normally want to do, like blitz more often than not. And then you become susceptible in the passing game.
Well, and that's why I feel like it falls on coaching. I mean, obviously coaching former coaches are going to deflect, right?
Right.
Of course, right? You're trying to protect what it is you do.
Yeah.
But the thing is you still have to be able to get out there and play games. It's not like you're like, oh, my starters are out, let's just pack it in for the year. Like, you have to coach up those players. That's why you're paid the big money to be a coach. Like, that's the whole point.
I can agree with that, but how do you coach not being bullied? I want to be clear. I want to be real about this. There are some things you can coach. Just like, I felt bad for, again, I don't know that the offensive line coach for the Jags or even the defensive line coaches necessarily should be fired or should have been fired. But I knew it looked weird when you're firing the whole defensive staff and not firing the other side of the ball, who seemingly had the same issue from my perspective. Hey, you look at the film, these guys are getting moved 3 yards, and the linebackers are literally trying to jump both gaps, trying to guess which hole the running back's going to run into because they don't have because the tackle's on skates. And I don't know how you coach that. How do you overcome that? That's the reason I say it's not one thing.
No,
unless the one thing is the GM. And that's the only way. That's the simplest answer. That may not even be the right answer, but if there is a simple answer, it is that.
I mean, it's an answer. I'll give you that. I
Fair.
don't think it's the only answer is the problem.
Ooh,
And the thing is the best way to coach against a player getting bullied is to run stunts, right? Like you change your blocking scheme so that you're not going head up on a guy that's just blowing you off the ball. You get a a kind of a rub block from one of your other linemen or something. I mean, there's ways to scheme being undersized and bullied. Like you can play effective football in that situation, which is why I say some of that falls on coaching.
right.
Now, again, like if you're just less talented and you're going up against a juggernaut of a team, yeah, you're going to get beat up. There's nothing
There's
around,
not
right?
much
The
you can do,
talent's not there.
but you can. You're saying you can kind of mediate or you can mitigate those issues by
100%.
trying to just keep your defensive linemen moving, slants, stunts, etc.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it also changes the way they have to run at you, right? Because they can't just blow you off the ball because now all of a sudden part of your block is going through the gap they were trying to run through. So now
Okay.
you can, if you're a second level guy, say you're an inside linebacker or something like that, now all of a sudden, because you know what the defense is, you have a gap that's going to close itself in a way, right? Because of the way that your stunt blocking is going through. Now, all of a sudden, you're not jumping side to side to find a gap. You know which gap is going to be open because it's going to be wide open because your guy is clearing that gap.
I got you.
Right.
No,
So, I mean, there's definitely.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right.
Well,
I'm gonna give you. I want to give you credit on saying you're not wrong. And some of these things are things that they did, and at least I can speak. I can surely speak to it earlier in the season. I know these are things that they did. I just don't know that that would work based on the play that I saw on the field, if that makes any sense. Like you said, eventually you're going to run up against a buzzsaw. You're going to run against the Cleveland Browns, a team that's just going to run the ball down your neck. You're going to run against 49ers. They're just going to dominate you. Doesn't matter what you
everywhere.
What you do.
Literally everywhere.
They're beating you man on man. It doesn't make a difference. But
Yeah.
there are games, to your point, the Tennessee Titans game. There are games, the Bengals game. There are games that you should win. The Bucks game, they got them destroyed. Certain games that you can absolutely do that, but those fatal flaws were super fatal, and they showed themselves like immediately.
No, for sure. And don't get me wrong, I didn't think you were going to have, an amazing season after watching, the first few games. Like you saw legitimate holes in what it is the team could do. Right.
But
like,
the record said otherwise. And that's the part that sucks.
Exactly.
It's like for fans, the argument you make is the argument that I made to a lot of people. And some people called me a not a homer. Some people called me like a hater.
Sure.
And I call those people homers because, again, I'm a Jaguar fan who covers the team. So I have to have that hat at different times. I'm like, sometimes I have hope. Sometimes I have to just say, man, this is what the film says, though. And even when the team was, it was 8-3, I'm sitting here like, yeah, but it doesn't look good. It's like the Eagles. Exactly like the Eagles. You can say the team's record looks great, but I don't believe
they backed into wins.
Yeah, in the ways that you're winning these games, and it doesn't look right. You can tell something just doesn't look right, even from the first game, the Indianapolis Colts game. That's when we knew DeForest Buckner versus Luke Fortner, the Jaguars center. Demolition tour, and we were like, all right, this is going to be a problem. Like, center will be a problem. We knew from that point on, first game of the season, and it just got worse and worse and worse as more teams figured it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I run into the same problem, right? I'm a Seahawks fan, but I'm an analyst, right? So I'm gonna watch the film objectively, and then if they're playing poorly, I'm going to call it out. Now, there's 3 hours on a weekend that I'm going to cheer like everybody else and pretend that my brain doesn't work and enjoy the game, right? But then after that, I'm going to rewatch that 3 hours and then largely be disappointed over the last couple of years. But
but at least you have that 3 hours. I don't get that 3 hours. I'm doing a live stream during the game where I'm still having to be reasonable because I may have someone for the other team on the same live stream to just give me some balance.
Sure.
So I can't just be out there, Jaguar towel swinging it and being extra fanatic. But so I don't even get that 3 hours, man. So congrats to you on that, giving yourself that downtime.
Well, see, I have to because Monday morning I have to report on all the games at 6 a.m.
There.
And so I need that minute on Sunday to just enjoy one of the games, because I got to watch all the rest of them so that I can accurately, depict what happened over the weekend. And so I need that 3 hours to like enjoy the thing, and then go right back into, all right, let's break this tape down. I think the thing that's funny is when you're talking to other fans, especially when they're just, a casual fan, right? They're not really watching the game intently, right? Like they're watching the game, but they're not watching film, right? Like they're not breaking down what's happening.
They don't know schemes. They don't know who's at fault. They don't know checks. They just know, hey man, this is what happened and he's wide open. It must have been the closest guy's fault, whatever.
Exactly. So, I mean, it's very different, because I mean, when I would watch games like that, they were much more enjoyable.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because now you got to be like, well, now you got to be that guy. Well, actually,
Exactly.
And then you're explaining schemes, and nobody wants to hear that. Shut up, nerd. Like, I'm right because I'm right. Whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I got you.
Absolutely.
What do you guys pick this year? I know it's close to where the Jaguars pick. I just didn't know exactly where.
We got the 16th pick.
We got the 16th
pick. So, and of course, I actually have a Hawk Talk show directly after this today. But
so you're right before us. I think you're one pick before us, because I'm pretty sure we got 17.
Really?
Yeah, I was pretty sure. I was pretty sure we had 17, and it just hit me like, wait a minute, where are you guys picking? Because I had an idea in my head that JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, might not make it past you guys, because that's who I think the Jaguars should end up drafting if he's still on the board.
I would be really surprised. I think Seattle probably goes with a quarterback here.
Oh.
And the reason I think that is they're in trouble with the cap.
Okay.
They're going to have a hard time re-signing guys because they got 20 free agents. So that is a crazy amount of your roster to be up, and then also be in cap trouble.
Okay.
So then, they bring in the new head coach, right? Not to say that he doesn't believe in Geno. Geno has a very team-friendly, he has a team-friendly deal, but he's in his second year of a 3-year deal, right? So you're probably going to start looking for whatever your next option is. It's not going to be Drew Lock. He played well enough that someone's going to want to pick him up, and Seattle's not going to be able to afford him. The report came out late last night, early this morning, that they're looking at potentially bringing back the Huskies offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then do you make a play for Penix? Because he just had him for the last, few years, right? So all of a sudden you have the position to pick up a Penix, right? Because he's slated as a late first round pickup. Yeah.
Mid to, it's going to go down to mid because he's a quarterback. But you're in the range. You're in shooting range.
You're in the range to go get him if you want him without having to give up a lot. You may actually be able to sit right where you are. Or maybe a Bo Nix, right? He's slated as a top second round guy. So, I mean, you could go get that quarterback because it would be a first rounder. You got 5 years with him, right? So even if he's not ready to go, he can hold a clipboard. Even if he's not ready to go next year, he could hold the clipboard one more year with Geno and then be ready to go. Like, you get a slow play this guy. You have Geno on a team-friendly deal, and you got the coach that was coaching him the last few years if they do bring him in. Okay. Now, it would be pretty crazy if they do, right? Because he just left the Huskies to go to Alabama. So he's been in Alabama for 3 weeks, and then potentially could come and be the OC for the Hawks. So, I mean, all of a sudden those kind of things tweak what it is they may or may not do, solely because, again, he's worked with the guy.
And that's a curious one. Would he want Penix? Would he want him as the quarterback? Because we've seen that on a few occasions lately when the NFL team hires a college OC or hires a college head coach, and everybody just knows it's going to be the quarterback he had, and then they pass on him because they know something, because they've seen so much of them. They know something that other people may not. That's going to be a curious one, though.
Well, and that's why I say, maybe they target a Bo Nix, because the offensive line has not been amazing.
Well, you guys have a young line, man. I mean,
Well,
it's
and
the
they were
youth
all hurt.
movement.
Yeah. Well, and they were all hurt last year. So, I mean, that plays into it for sure. But Bo Nix obviously is more athletic. He can run around a little bit more.
Right.
Penix throws a better ball. So
Well,
it really depends on what it is they're trying to do. But because of where they pick, that is definitely something they could play out.
Well, I mean, that makes me feel great because again, I've been team like as I said, I've been team Jetson Powers Johnson from day one. I always knew his draft stock was going to start climbing as soon as you started getting into the Senior Bowl, as soon as you started getting into the draft season and all the interviews and everything else, and he's been dominating. Like they were already saying he was going to be an early second round to late first round, and now they're talking about he's going to be in the low 20s, and I'm like, dude, by the time this process is over, this dude's going to be in the top 15. Like, and that's just kind of where I see him falling at this point because he's a center and guard option.
Yeah.
And in a draft where you only have like 1 to 2 good options and 32 teams need a good center, yeah, you're gonna have those options.
Yeah. No, and it is a position that the Seahawks need. So I mean, it's not that I would rule it out.
It's just you think quarterback's more important, and it's obviously the high value, the high money issue that makes or breaks your team basically.
Well, especially if this is the coaching staff that actually comes together. Again, that was speculation. There was talk about it. So we don't know if he's getting hired or not. But if he did, that could foreshadow a quarterback in the first round. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting.
And you had Gino on a 3-year, so you got another 2 left, and you probably even have an out after this upcoming year if you choose to. It just depends on what that looks like.
So there was an out after every single year. Like this was an incredibly team-friendly deal.
Oh,
so
Gino, baby.
Hey, it was his first crack at it, right?
I got you.
And it was off of 1 year, so it's not like he was gonna, get everything out of it.
I know. I just figured teams would learn from Blake Bortles. Don't sign those contracts where you can get out like the next year. Get the money. Be like your boy and Danny Dimes. Yeah, be like get the money when the opportunity is there. Don't bend them over, but like keep them in it for 2 to 3 years.
I mean, did Danny Dimes not bend him over? I'm pretty sure that's how that went down.
I mean, he did well, but I thought they had an out in 2 years also.
Kind of.
I mean, it'd be a hit, like a big after June 1st cap hit, like a hit toward the debt money is concerned. But they had a general out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it'll hurt. Like they could technically move on, but it'll hurt.
I got you. We've been on the Inside the Pigskin podcast, so I'm always a fan of legends at the bank. Like I'm there for it when you have the opportunity to make the money, because once this new CBA happens, who knows what's going to happen with negotiations, and
for sure.
These careers are short, so man, get the money when you can.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So speaking of coaches moving around, you lose another pass game coordinator in Nick Holtz.
Yeah.
You go into the Titans. So this is the second year in a row you lose one within your division.
Yeah, and that's been interesting because I feel like most teams want to obviously get a gauge of what the Jaguars are doing, and I know it's not specific to that. I know it's not only that they're just trying to get information on the one of their main competitions in the division, but it probably don't hurt, right? Like
for sure.
It don't hurt. Like, and I always thought that the Jaguars losing Jim Bob Cooter was a huge thing because everything just seemed to go down after that. And I couldn't put my finger on why, because the offense as a general statement seemed to be generally the same, but just some small things that were just like off. And I'm like, I wonder if that's just game planning, like implementation, not like play calling. Just game planning, implementation throughout the week, having the additional head in the room, because you don't know who has that strength, that one great idea that becomes a package that becomes a key to the offense throughout the season, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a lot of what's going on with the passing game coordinators. Like, the offense is Doug Peterson's. Cool. We all know that. If you know anything about Doug, he's calling the plays, and it's his offensive scheme. Sure. And then you have Press Taylor calling the plays. Awesome. But then you have a quarterback-friendly offense with 5 to 7 guys every year. In 2022 and in 2023, 5 to 7 guys with the quarterback background surrounding this team, and they all have some nuggets or some hand in the implementation of the offense in the offseason or throughout the week.
Yep.
And again, Nick Host is one of those guys, so it's hard to figure out what he contributed specifically, because again, it's a team effort in that way.
Yep.
But at the same time, it's also like, well, dang, now it's just someone else who knows how we do things that's
Exactly.
going to be with another opponent. And it's not like they're, they were calling plays here. Actually, I don't know that he's going to even be calling plays there, because I think Callahan is, right?
I
Uh,
mean,
for the
yeah, I
Titans.
mean, he's stepping in to be the OC, but yeah, I don't know how much play calling he's really going to do.
Right, because I believe they stated Brian Callahan was going to be calling plays in Tennessee. So even there, he's going to be doing a lot of the same thing that he may have been doing in Jacksonville, helping to put that game plan together. But that's just going to be interesting to me because, again, it's hard to say, it's hard to quantify how much he added to the offense and what his great ideas were versus what's not. Like, it's hard to figure out what his philosophy is.
Sure.
Other than the fact that, you can go back his history and saying that maybe he has some, Shanahan or Callahan influences, something like that. But who knows, man? He may be a great OC. He may be great at just implementing those things, or he could be Nate Hackett. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I guess we'll find out.
Right, we
But,
had Nate Hackett, so so I'm like, we thought he was good in Green Bay, and then he was terrible in Jacksonville. I have no idea.
Yeah. So do you think they actually backfill that position, or do you think they just get tired of filling that position?
They're going to have to, though. I mean, passing game coordinator, everybody has one. Like
Yeah.
in today's NFL, you almost have to have one. But whether or not that's going to be someone that, if that's someone else they have on staff, then they're still going to have to hire someone else in a different role, because the way that they work, they've always filled it. The question of the hour is whether it's going to be someone like a Frank Wright, because he already interviewed with Jacksonville previously, or I can't say officially interviewed. He met with Doug previously, and we can't tell you if that was an informal, like there was no official statement saying we interviewed Frank Wright. They just had a conversation about his interest into the team, reportedly. So maybe something like that, but it wouldn't be for an OC. So maybe he's going to just keep taking a look and seeing what else is out there, or it could be thinking that I had someone else in my mind and I just drew a blank. But nevertheless, my original thought is obviously Frank Wright, because I think that would be my favorite hire, because he's done well even when he's not done well at all of his stops, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that would actually be an interesting pickup for sure.
Well, yeah, it's been his Doug putting his boy on and while he doesn't have a job, getting him a paycheck and maybe even helping the Jaguars out in that process. I'm not a hater of that at all.
No, exactly. The real question is, do you, going back to player personnel a little bit, and the disappearance of Calvin Ridley altogether.
All right, let's get into that, man.
So is it, you moving him to the slot? Like, what are we doing?
Well,
because
you can't move into the slot for the Jaguars unless you're moving. Where are you moving Christian Kirk? Because unless you're going to run a lot of 4 receiver sets, which you're not, because
not ideally, because you're throwing the ball to the other team a lot, so you probably
Well, it's not even so the way that they want to run the offense based on the personnel that they have, and I have to quantify that, because they may absolutely want to run a whole different offense, but based on the personnel that they have, the way for the last 2 years that they've wanted or leaned to running the offense has been, I have my tight end who is kind of a slot receiver, but kind of can block when he has the effort to block, and Evan Ingram. And he's a very good slot tight end, kind of, I guess, merger, we'll call it. And then you have a really good slot receiver in Zay Jones, and you have the outside threat, or, whoever that may be, whether that's Marvin Jones Jr. or whether that's Calvin Ridley, etc. And then you use Christian Kirk as your other slot receiver. Cool.
Sure.
We generally have that. In this year and most of last year, Christian Kirk was always that slot guy. Because of that isolated Calvin Ridley as this X receiver, as this outside receiver who they basically only use on speed outs, on ISO routes, on deep comebacks, on deep curls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But nothing that allows him to actually be the receiver you want. Essentially, you want him to be like this. The receiver you signed, the receiver you traded for, was a
Yep.
receiver who you put into bunch sets, who you allowed yak, who you
Yeah.
ran on inside routes and slants and all these things. And they're doing none of those things with him in
Yep.
their offensive scheme. They're only doing those exact things with Christian Kirk. But
Yeah.
I was shocked when they lost Christian Kirk. So this is my problem with the coaching staff comes in. When they lost Christian Kirk due to injury late in the season, what do we all expect to do? What does an intelligent football fan say? We're saying, all right, cool. Put Calvin Ridley in that spot and let's keep this thing going. And it never happened. It just never happened. And I don't know what to take from that. Is that saying that you guys didn't realize you should probably just put him in that role and put someone else outside? Or do you guys know something we don't know? Were those rumors true that Calvin Ridley is consistently running the wrong routes, or we have option routes that they're on different pages?
I
If
mean,
that's true,
it looked like it.
well, I say it looked like it, and I actually agree with you that it looked like it. But to anyone else not looking at all the Jaguar games, it may seem like, all right, this is a Calvin Ridley problem. But my problem is I have a question whether or not it's a Trevor Lawrence problem. And nobody wants to talk about that
I
because
mean,
we
could be.
know we have a quarterback who has religiously or pretty consistently made some, we'll call them questionable decisions, questionable audibles, lower IQ plays,
Yeah.
lower IQ as far as clock management and ball
Sure.
security and the WTF throws and the wrong moments and first down and goal and somehow you're throwing an interception into triple coverage that doesn't make like those kind of things.
Yeah.
Well, you have that kind of player who also has check and audible authority. It makes it hard to figure out who's truly at fault for these things. Is this a bad play call? Is this a bad check? Is this a bad audible? Is this the quarterback or is it truly the OC? Is this the receiver? But it wasn't just Calvin Ridley. We have multiple of those issues with Zay Jones this past year. We even had two interceptions, I'm sorry, from Evan Ingram that were on miscommunications. And that makes it a little bit like, wait a minute, that's three of your four main receivers who's had some serious miscommunication issues this year. Is that on them
Yeah.
or is that on the person throwing the ball?
Well, I mean, I think that's the person throwing the ball, and maybe it's repetition issues. I mean, who knows? Maybe it stems from practice. Maybe they aren't getting enough reps in those moments.
He was injured for, again, those 4 injuries late in the season. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the fact that he's just too injured to get practice throughout the week, so they're on different pages all the last 6 games. That could absolutely be it.
It could be, and of course, Triple B showing up. Too much going on for a young, inexperienced QB. I mean, that could be part of it. I mean, it could be part of it.
Doug Peterson said something.
Season,
No, Doug Peterson said something similar at the end of the season, and I don't want to get the quote wrong. That's why I won't say the whole quote. But
sure.
I know my summary of it was like basically, it sounds like they don't want to give Trevor Lawrence too much. Was my summary of it. It sounds like they don't want to give him too much because if you give him too much, he'll get bogged down. So they're allowing him to take certain things out of the playbook and etc. And that's what that sounds like, too much going on for an inexperienced quarterback. So that
it could be, especially when you figure, when you look at it as that his rookie season wasn't a rookie season. Like that was the epic dumpster fire, right?
Yes.
Where you're probably actually taking a step back more than moving forward with how much craziness was going on that season, right? When your rookie quarterback, who's supposed to be the next big thing, isn't even the top 5 in the storylines around your team, it's not ideal, right? So I don't I don't figure that he would have really had time to grow in any way. And then of course a whole new regime comes in. So I mean, last year was really kind of his rookie year.
Yeah.
Right. So now you're coming into year 2.
This is the sophomore slump.
Right. So, yeah. Right. So, I mean, you hope that it's a step forward. You hope that he's adapting to more of this playbook. He's got, consistency at coach for the most part, at least the key pieces. So it's,
you just made the perfect argument for why they would have kept Press Taylor as OC, as why they would have kept the scheme the same, basically.
Yeah. No, and I think you do, right? Like, because you can't, I mean, you've seen it with countless quarterbacks. If you're
Mhm.
changing schemes all the time, their play never develops, right? I
Right.
mean, when you look at Baker Mayfield, we'll go with Baker Mayfield. I'm not even a huge Baker fan, right? If you've been on a show with me ever, you know I'm not a huge
Right.
Baker guy because he's so wildly inconsistent. But the thing is he's had a different scheme nonstop. So how advanced do you really expect him to get?
Right.
Right? Because it's not like he's ever familiar with a playbook. He's switching teams constantly, or when he was with one team, they switched schemes constantly, right?
Okay.
So I think through his entire career, he's had the same offensive coordinator twice, like
Yes.
in back-to-back seasons. So, I mean, it's not exactly like he's set up for success here, right? And I feel like that's probably where Trevor Lawrence is right now. Is the first year is a wash, right? Like that was just a garbage year.
Yeah.
Nothing you can do about that. So then Peterson comes in and they start running their scheme. They do well, right? They had a solid season. And then you thought they were going to come back the next year and kind of build on that.
Well, did they? So this is another, but I agree with the overall premise. But can we be clear in saying they had a great second half of the season? They had a dreadful first half of the season in
No
2022.
doubt. No
In
doubt.
2022, like there were
Yeah.
questions about, hey man, I don't know what this is going to be like, because I forget what they started the season as, but I know it was rough.
No,
They ended up,
he was going the Joe Burrow route.
yeah, and then all of a sudden they win the vast majority of the games in late in the season and make it into the playoffs on the last game of the season, and it's like, all right, awesome. It's basically the exact opposite of what happened this season. Just flip it.
Yep. Yeah, he
And
basically went from let me be like Joe Burrow to let me be like Justin Fields.
so I only give you that caveat to say, don't forget what happened the first half of last season. That did happen, and that was
No,
still
for
last
sure.
season. That's all.
For sure. No, it's been inconsistent play, but at the same time, you expected him to not be good at the beginning of last year,
Mhm.
right? He had a disaster of a rookie season and has all new
Agreed.
coaching. Like
Agreed.
how good are you going to be day one? You're not going to be good. Like you don't even expect to be good.
Agreed.
Right? Like you come out the gate and you're like, cool, whole new system, dumpster fire of last season. Like you don't even watch that tape. You just light it on fire, call it a day. And so then, you come into this season and you build as the season goes, right? Which is what they did last year. And then this season comes around and they get off to an okay, like it's a solid start on a stat sheet, right? 8-3
On the
8-3
stat
is
sheet.
on a stat sheet, solid start. If you
Yes.
watch the games, you didn't feel real confident about 8-3, but all the same, it goes down as wins. You could say the same types of things for the Steelers, right? They were winning games, not because their offense showed up. And I don't mean show up in the game. I'm saying show up to the stadium. Like that, that offense didn't do anything.
Yeah, it was
So
terrible.
yeah, right. But on a stat sheet, the win record looked nice, right? So that's kind of where I felt the Jags were this year. Is like on a stat sheet, it looked good. And I had picked them to win their division at the beginning of the season, but yeah, I mean, it just, man,
It's rough. It's rough.
I look for him to have a bounce back season. He's got a couple of years with the same group, essentially. Right now, obviously, there's work to be done because the defense has some real problems, and the offensive line needs to be better. Like, obviously, there's things to work on. But I would expect his gameplay to take a step forward. And if it doesn't, then all of a sudden the narrative of where he is as a player or where he can be as a player changes dramatically.
Well, I think I agree that he's going to take a step forward in 2024 simply because I just think he's going to be injured less. He's not generally a guy who gets injured, and if he does, he doesn't miss much time. But that just wasn't the case in 2020. It just wasn't the case in 2023. Like, for whatever reason, and I say whatever reason, the real whatever reason is this offensive line was just cheeks. The offensive line was just not great. And I can't believe that they wouldn't get that rectified in this upcoming season. It stinks that it took the season to happen for them to get that rectified. And there are some arguments within the fan base. There's arguments within the locker room, as we've already talked about who's at fault for that being the case. Because in Trent Baalke, the Jaguars GM's exit interview, it seemed, from my perspective and many others' perspectives, that he was throwing the coaching staff under the bus, saying that the draft picks and the players that were brought in haven't been developed in the way that they should have been. Whereas others, if you were to ask them, would say that the players that were brought in weren't the players that they should have been. And
So that's
I
a
don't,
GM issue. Yeah,
and yeah, because the GM's never going to say it's my fault, and the coaches are never going to say it's my fault. And who knows where the true answer is? Like, is it really like
uh,
you won't know until a new coach comes in and tries to develop those same guys?
that situation is the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other.
Right.
They're all
And eventually you have enough of that. You're going to have players taking sides in the locker room. You're going to have coaches taking sides in the locker room, because at that point it's job security, is saving my job, is saving my reputation around the league kind of situation. And
absolutely.
nobody wants that. So the Jaguars in that way will need a successful 2024 season, but they also will need a pretty major infusion of talent. And it doesn't have to be a full makeover. To Coach Balky and even to Doug Peterson's exit interviews, to their points, it doesn't have to be a full makeover. Again, if you get someone like a JPJ at in the draft at center, you can place him at center, and then maybe get a free agent guard somewhere along the way, uh,
Yeah.
and hopefully just at least average level. You don't even have to replace Brandon Scherf, who, former All Pro, but has some injury issues over the last 2 years. You'll probably be an average to above average running offense again, and that's the difference of one additional win for the Jaguars. All of a sudden, you may be a 10-win team, playoff team, etc.
Yeah.
Assuming Houston doesn't take another step forward.
Oh, you know they're
That's,
gonna though.
that's another right. They
Yeah.
got top 5 cap space and
Well,
pretty good
and
team.
picks. They got picks. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like
They're gonna stand still and just wait for us to catch up.
like that's not a real thing.
Right. So now they've unfortunately lost that slight advantage that they already would have had
Yeah.
over those teams, because they just essentially wasted this year by not having foresight. And
I
I said that's
actually
on the that's on the GM, and that's on the coaching staff.
I actually don't know that you're the favorite to win this division. Like I wouldn't say that you have an edge anymore. Like I wouldn't say the edge you had.
Yeah.
How to word this, I guess.
No.
You definitely don't have an edge anymore. I guess I'll put it that way.
No, I got you. No, they're not the favorite. At this point, it feels more like a pick 'em.
It does. It does, especially depending on what it is Houston does this offseason.
Right. But based on their past drafts, I say drafts, the last draft and the way they were so aggressive, based on the fact that they still have top 5, cap space to
Yeah.
fix their receiver room, and that's even with the injuries they already had. I don't have I have more belief in the front executive office for the Texans than I do for the executive office for the Jaguars, and that's just me being honest.
No, for sure, for sure. And how weird does that sound coming out of your face?
Not weird at all, actually. I wasn't to be clear, I was never a fan of Trent Baalke, so that's not weird at all.
Yeah.
I gave him the benefit of a doubt based on how the Jaguars ended up playing last year. Like, there were actual, like, real life fans in Duval County that were apologizing to Trent Baalke at the end of the season for the clown memes and the clown mask and everything else. The movement that the Jaguars fan base tried to get Trent Baalke fired before the 2022 season. And there were, like, real life grown adults apologizing to a Trent Baalke because of the success of that season. And I'm like, I even said it then. I'm like, I'll give him another season just to make sure I'm not crazy. And then that next season comes and we're like, oh no, when we have higher expectations, they're not where we need them to be. And I don't want you to be good enough just not to be the the Carolina Panthers. I want you to be good enough when we're comparing you to what we expect you to be, like just an above average NFL football team. And right now, you're not playing like that. Not in the trenches. You don't have the pants.
No, for sure. There's no doubt. And I guess getting back to Calvin Ridley, because it's kind of a weird situation. So do you move off him?
No. That's the thing. You don't create holes if you don't have to. And because I don't think you're good enough in the way that you draft. And we just talked about Trent Baalke, the GM. I don't know that you're good enough in the way that you draft. I don't know that you're good enough in the way that you necessarily sign your free agent or pick your free agents right now. That you want to create holes. If you can keep him, but keep him in an intelligent way. And there are ways to do this, because we've seen recent like where they have a trade that has a condition. It's a second round pick if you sign him by this date, or it's a third round pick if you don't sign him to an extension, etc. There was a defensive tackle, and I forget the name. I'm drawing a blank right now. I believe it was for Cincinnati, who had a similar trade situation. And all they did was they just basically extended them the day after the deadline or an hour after the deadline passed. Like if you have some kind of a handshake agreement, like, hey, man, if you do this, then we will sign you literally 1 minute after the new league year starts. Something along those lines, or we'll let you test the market and see what you're worth. But we are willing to give you this, and maybe, if you sign with us on that first day of free agency instead of beforehand, that way they can then salvage keeping that second round draft pick, and it would only cost the Jaguars a third, and they would still keep Ridley. Otherwise, they're going to have to use a franchise tag to keep him, and I'm really hoping that they don't do that, because we still have a guy named Josh Allen who needs to be re-signed, and I think they want to keep him in Jacksonville. So that's going to be.
They should want to keep him in Jacksonville.
Well, they screwed up though. They haven't even started this conversation. Well, I'm sorry. At the time of Trent Baalke's exit interview, he confirmed that at that point they hadn't even sat down to start the conversation about negotiations. And again, this was weeks after the season was already done, and I was at a loss. That I was in his corner in some of the things that he said as far as developments and everything else. And then he said that, and I'm like, I'm out. What? Wait, what? You haven't even started? Dude, we could have had this thing done in these last 2 weeks. That didn't make sense to me, especially after what you went through with Evan Ingram just last year, where you had to franchise tag him to keep him on, and then you sign him to an extension a few weeks later. You've seen this story. You know a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two. Be better than you were last year. And they hadn't even started. So hopefully they've now sat down, because in Josh Allen's camp 4 days later came out with the report saying that they weren't happy because you're talking to the media about wanting me to be in Jacksonville, but you haven't even sat down with my team to start negotiating. The same thing any obvious fan would say, like, yeah, why haven't you started that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes no sense.
The only argument I could even reasonably make is they hadn't hired a defensive coordinator yet, and they wanted to wait till they hired a defensive coordinator just so they can have his opinion of it. But I don't know what defensive coordinator is going to say, no, we don't want Josh Allen, trade him. Like, I don't know who's going to say that.
I don't think there's one in high school that would be like, hey, let's get rid of Josh Allen. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, that's the only argument I can make. Like, maybe we want to run a I don't know, freaking what defense? 2 defensive linemen defense, like a 2-4 or something. I don't know. I don't know. I can't think. I'm just trying to be fair to all parties involved. That way, I'm not just saying this is my opinion and this is what happened. That's my guess.
Two defensive linemen front. All of a sudden, you're just like, hey, just run. It's fine. Like, we ain't gonna try and stop you because your linemen are going to be downfield.
Maybe Ryan Nielsen comes in, because again, that Atlanta Falcons front wasn't like amazing. Like, it was good. They had Calais Campbell. They had who was the big end? Calais was the big end. They had a solid front, but it wasn't a great front. But they played really well for the athletes that they had. So my thought was maybe it was something like, hey, we want to bring the new DC in, and maybe he says we don't need this incredible guy. We just need other guys, and maybe we can franchise tag Josh Allen and get some serious resources for this top 5 defensive end or the top 5 edge. Like, maybe there's some. I don't want to be unfair to Trent Baalke, even though I have my current opinion of him, but there are some intelligent football moves there if you simply don't have the system for that athlete, and maybe you can pick up some resources in that process. So in that way, I can see it, but also hopefully they've hired Nielsen for over a week. They've sat down for Josh Allen for over a week. Like, at this point, that's my hope. Otherwise, I don't know what we're doing out here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, some of the things they've done are head scratchers for sure.
Yes, it's hard to give them the benefit of a doubt. It's really hard to give them a benefit of a doubt on anything right now, because it seems like they're making all the wrong decisions.
Absolutely. All right. We are just about to the top of the hour. We're going to do our ad break real quick and then come back right on the other side.
Okay.
This is Reggie Jones, owner and founder of Air Sports Academy. Air is based on the 4 core principles: heart, education, integrity, resiliency. AIR is about developing student athletes physically and mentally through training, mentorship, and effective marketing. We've created a platform and a blueprint for our state to shine in the brightest of lights. I created this program because it was a need for our state. We needed to have the light shine on the student athletes in our region, and now that is happening at an all-time and undeniable rate. We created a lane for the kids in our state to get their college education paid for and set their families up for future success. We created an environment where serious athletes can now come compete fearlessly. We've achieved this through our variety of elite programs. Our 6-month off-season program, where first-year starters or seasoned vets can all come develop. Our 5-on-5 program, which is all about our line. Our youth tackle program, which is the first and only youth tackle team from the state of Washington to ever win a major national championship. Our 7-on-7 program, which is ranked top 10 in the country every year. Our high school 11-on-11 club tackle program, which creates a unique and much-needed opportunity for our kids. Our college prep program, which allows our graduates to come back from college and prepare for the upcoming season. Our track and field program, which creates an opportunity for our young air boys and air girls to continue to get faster. When you're a national program, you receive national respect, which is why when you look at recruiting boards and top player lists from around the country, you'll always find players from air on those lists. Which is why college coaches from some of the most prestigious schools around the country come into our facility to recruit our players. The Penn State, Alabama, Oregon, Stanford, Florida State, the list goes on. Our players are being recruited, offered, and committing to some of the top schools in the nation. The experience our players and families receive is second to none. We offer a competitive brand of sports at Air. We are the ball. And with that comes great responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
All right. All right. So Air Academy, if you're not familiar with it, actually is up here in the Pacific Northwest. Okay. And buddy of mine, Reggie Jones, he was on the 2009 Saints Super Bowl team. Wow. And so he has created this youth program. And so it's located right here in the Pacific Northwest. So pretty
Very
cool.
Nice.
Pretty
cool.
That
was a motivating video. Made me want to play some Pop Warner football.
All right, and we got McLovin falling in here. All right.
So apparently, Bo, Yahoo says that you and your links are spam. So it was in my spam folder, but apparently Pags is not spam. So I think what Yahoo is trying to say to you is, you're not legit.
Well, I mean, that makes sense.
Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. This is the beef between you and Yahoo. I'm just a messenger. That's all I am. I'm just a messenger. Okay, let's get. But it's okay. We're back on track now.
Right.
Yeah, let's stop spamming folk, man. Come on.
Hey, yeah. I mean, it's just McLovin's way of trying not to be here today.
No, you know that's not.
He's
true.
like, you know what? It's Friday. I'm gonna try and tap out. Oh,
it is Friday. It is Friday.
Oh man. So McLovin, Travis McLovin. So we've been talking Jags, and well, of course, now I guess the piece of the Jags we need to talk about is how do they move forward to regain momentum?
Ooh, momentum. I hate. Sorry, before I even get into this, I hate that word. I don't, because I'm not a fan of momentum. I'm not that guy. Like, I think if you did great at the end of the season, that's awesome. Doesn't mean you're not going to stink the start of the next season. And if you were great at the end of the season, then that doesn't mean you're not going to stink at the start of the season. Like, there's
you got a lot of different personnel.
Bingo, a lot of different personnel. You're going to have scheme changes. Mm-hmm. You're going to have player changes, etc. You have guys that's rusty, all that. So just to start there, I don't necessarily believe in momentum. So it's not even about that. It's just about, hey, how do you get your team? Let's start. How do we get the team back to where they were at the end of 2022? Let's just start there. How do we get back to zero? Well, you have to first figure out what your identity is as a team, because that's something that the GM actually that said that I agreed with, and we know I have my feelings on the Jaguars GM Trent Baalke. If you're a San Francisco 49ers fan, you probably have some of those similar feelings from his time before John Lynch. But
True.
even with that being said, that doesn't make the man wrong in some of these things that he's saying. The Jaguars didn't have an identity in 2023. Like when you think about the team's offense or even the defense, if anything, if they did have an identity, it was probably finesse. And that's not what you want to be known as.
That's what I was going to say. They did have one, just not one you want.
Right. Like they are the Detroit Lions in every way, other than the one big difference being one is actually made on physicality and the other one's made on, if anything, finesse. So if you don't have an identity, there's your step one. So I'm probably bringing in 1 to 2 offensive linemen between center and guard, maybe even a tackle, more likely than not the tackle, and maybe moving off of Cam Robinson contract, because he's frankly a middle of the pack offensive tackle, but he gets paid like a top 5 because that's just the way that it works out with the free agency. So I'm going to open up some of that cap space by just getting on to maybe a rookie contract and maybe moving Anton Harrison over to left tackle. I have Walker Little either play right or a draft pick at that point. I'm going to get, as we talked about earlier, JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson. Goodness gracious. I always the JP. I remember JPJ, but his name always escapes me. And I'm bringing him in from the draft if he's still on the board, past you guys. Because again, I honestly had a thought that you guys were going to draft him at 16, but now knowing that may or may not happen, then I'm ecstatic, because he's around that 20th ranked prospect at this current moment in time. And by my perspective, he's probably going to be starting to get that talk right around the Jaguars pick at 17.
Well, that'd be a huge pickup for you.
Right.
The O-line definitely needs help.
It's our main issue, and he's the main issue on the area that has the main offensive issues, if that makes sense. He is the main issue in the area of issue. So if we can replace that, it's going to go tenfold, because it impacted the running game, it impacted the passing game so dramatically. Just the fact that they couldn't run anything inside of the guards. It just that was it. So it will help Travis Etienne. It will help everyone tenfold. Getting Trevor Lawrence back to just getting the ball out, on time. And by that, I mean, like, they couldn't do anything after 2.5 seconds. So I'm saying starting him, not trying to add like you said, you're in the third year of an offense. He should be getting more advanced, etc. I'm not worried about advance. Just show me you can run the offense.
Show me competency. I got you.
You can be a distributor of the ball. Show me you can do what. And I hate to compare him to Brock Purdy, because they're not the same player. They're not even the same kind of offense. But show me you can be in that role of just someone distributing the ball, just getting it out. Show me the highlight plays later. Just show me you can do those basic things. And if we have an adequate running game and an adequate defense, that will be enough to get you 9-10 wins in and of itself. I feel like that would get you back to base.
He needs to be prime Flacco is what he needs.
Ooh, Flacco.
Oh, Lord,
No.
Here's the deal, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Trevor Lawrence miss some time this season?
He did.
I mean, he was hurt. So I don't know. Some of that stuff. I don't think
I was just saying ring-winning Flacco. Ring-winning Flacco. He had a good season.
Right.
I think it's too premature to judge this Jaguars team, because they have dealt with injuries. If anything, they just need to get Calvin Ridley. I'd like to see him get more involved in the offense. I don't think they got him. And again, but Calvin was coming off that long suspension, so I want to see what he kind of does next year. I think, this. If anything, I think the offensive line is your issue, and maybe even bulk up a little bit more in that secondary or on your defense. 1 or 2 key play, but I don't think you're that far off. And I think some of this gets blown out of proportion, because if Trevor Lawrence is there the whole season, he doesn't go down with those injuries. We could have been talking playoffs for this team. So some of this stuff could be a little.
I agree with you, but I agree with you. This is a playoff team, but I honestly thought this was a playoff team last year, and the fact that they weren't. How do you say this in the right way?
They were trying
without me getting fired.
So you start 8-3, you don't got to do a lot. Like,
Right. They were a playoff team just like they were a playoff team in 2022. I don't think anything materially changed between 2022 and 2023. I think the major difference was the fact that the Tennessee Titans collapsed in 2022, allowing the Jaguars the opportunity to make the playoffs in 2022, if that makes sense. If the Jaguars don't make the playoffs in 2022, there's no way they don't proceed in that offseason in a significantly different way going into 2023. So them just simply making the playoffs and having that Chargers come back from behind win, I think changed the trajectory of how 2023 went, because then they sat on their hands as far as the offensive line and defensive line going into this season. So that's why I'm focused only and mainly and solely on the offensive and defensive lines, is because I'm like, no, you guys need to buck up. If you thought you were the Detroit Lions coming into this season and you slowly realize that's not who you are, now how do you become that? If that
Please
makes sense.
insert Jim Mora meme or a Jim Mora clip here.
So, I mean, because the defensive line did have its issues.
Yeah.
Do you think that secondary is as bad as it looked, or you think it's because they just didn't get home?
See, these are two different things. But now I'm happy we're talking about it, because we hadn't talked about the DBs and we hadn't talked much about the defensive line, why they were what they were. All right. So they had a defense that we already talked about earlier is normally middle of the pack. They're actually just a basic middle of the pack, right around 15th in most stats, or that 15 to 18 range in most stats as far as the defense was concerned. And they were always incredible at turnovers. They were top 4 in the league last year, and when they were 8-3 at that time of the season, they were 3rd or 4th in turnovers, and that's what salvaged them all the time as far as the data and as far as the stats were concerned. And as soon as those turnovers stopped, the defense started looking real suspect. Well, the same thing with this season. It's the same as last season. It's just the turnovers, because they were a heavy zone team who had a defensive line that was, the interior defensive line that was kind of questionable. They signed Devon Hamilton to this big contract in the offseason because he plays so well in 2022. And then he had an injury, a non-football related injury in the offseason, and basically couldn't play until the second half of the season. It was like late October and he wasn't himself. We have a lot of film to talk about it. I'm not even going to say the specifics, but in Jaguar circles, we had a lot of conversations about, hey man, look at this play and you tell me what you see. And then you just be like, dang, Devon, like, what are you doing here? And he was one of the main guys we were going to lean on. In addition, they signed Dewan Smoot as their alternate defensive tackle. Sorry, edge kind of defensive tackles, floating guy. And he was going to allow Trayvon Walker the opportunity to go to defensive tackle in some pass rushing situations. He's coming off of an ACL. He wasn't himself also. What do? Now we're giving significant snaps to the 4th string guy, Chason, who's just not giving you anything as far as the pass rush is concerned, and you're stuck. And that's what I said earlier when I said if you ask some of the defensive coaches who used to be there, who are no longer there, they'll probably tell you these is our issues. How do you coach around getting bullied in these areas when you don't have the dogs to actually move guys?
Yeah,
and the linebackers can't stay clean.
Bo and Travis, speaking of that specifically, I'm glad you said that. So Trevor Lawrence, Tyson Campbell, Andre Sisco, offensive tackle Walker Little are all eligible for contracts 2024. You're $37 million in cap space. How are you going to bring those guys back? Plus, try to bring in free agents, and then plus go in and get your draft capital and get them all under contract. Do you see any kind of issues there to keep all of this momentum going for next year or for this upcoming season?
There's a few guys who are just going to be extended, and that's like whether that now there's a conversation about whether or not D will goodness gracious, I'm drawing a blank right now. Jaguars cornerback is D will Darius Williams, may or may not be on the roster next year. And in my personal opinion, as a DB, I'm signing him. I'm signing him to an extension to lower his cap hit. First of all, I'm probably signing
backload it with a signing bonus kind of thing.
Yeah. Just to lower his cap number. I'm also, as far as Foye, Jaguars middle linebacker, I'm also going to sign him to an extension that's going to lower his cap number. And then you have a few guys where we talked about earlier whether or not Cam Robinson's going to be on. I think they're going to draft a tackle just to get off that contract, because he is just an average in every way, and that's not a bad thing, because average is good. You don't want to create holes. But in every situation we've seen Walker Little play, he's played to at least Cam Robinson general level. And that's based on all the advanced stats. That's based on pressures giving up. That's based on his play in the running game. That's based on PFF numbers. Like the data is out there. We've talked about it ad nauseum between, in the Jaguar circles. He's played well enough to be that, but they paid Cam Robinson, so Cam Robinson's going to get that playing time over Walker Little. And we always knew that. So I can absolutely see a scenario where they're just getting off that Cam Robinson contract and either moving Anton Harrison to left tackle or putting Walker Little there and just leaving Walker Little as their swing tackle option and just drafting a guy. So that will lower that cap number also. And then there are just some questions about what they want to play on defense, because Ryan Nielsen's mostly a man guy, where Mike Caldwell, the former Jaguars defensive coordinator, was mostly a zone guy. So Darius Williams played for the Rams before coming to Jacksonville. That's a press man team. That to me sounds like, I don't want to get rid of that guy who has that kind of experience. I want to see what he's going to do in this Ryan Nielsen defense. But some people say because of his cap number, they want to get off that contract and just leave Tyson Campbell as the lower salaried option. Again, DB guy, DB guy. I want to lower his cap number. I want to extend Darius Williams before he has that incredible year. We've seen him have those incredible seasons because that's how we signed him as a free agent in the first place. He was doing well in the man coverage defense. I would trust that basically. So between all those signings, I mean, generally, if you were releasing, goodness gracious, Folokasi, I can't say his name's name. Folokasi, the defensive tackle for the Jaguars. Basically, you're going to open up like $15 million in cap space. Like over all those moves, you're probably going to be closer to that high 50s and if not low 60s in cap space. That's enough to get you some moves at that point. If you're just trying to sign a guard, or if you're just a middle of the pack guard, maybe even a top guard as far as cap space is concerned, and then that way, and then your draft picks. So
I was going to say, how many picks do you have this year?
We have all the picks other than because we're going to get the compensatory third rounder for Jawan Taylor. We're going to get a 6th rounder also. So bear with me a minute. I don't know the exact number, but I know we're going to get those two, and we're going to lose either the 2nd or the 3rd rounder for the Calvin Ridley trade.
You're going to have like 8 picks then.
Right. So we're going to have in that, that 7 to 9 range basically.
I got you. Okay.
So we're fine on that. We're fine on cap space if you look at it from that perspective. Once you make those moves, you'll probably be top 10 to top 12 in cap space.
Well, I mean, secondary wise, like if you like your secondary pieces,
that's the big piece, and that's the part that I just
the hard part is it's not a huge draft when it comes to secondary, like good secondary play. Like there's going to be dudes, but are they better than what you have?
And I don't want to make a hole, because I don't want you to be in the spot where you're creating a hole and now you're forced to fill it, or you're forced to have that big opportunity in a man defense. I'm just not there with that. And that's why I say I'll keep D-Will. I'll extend him now for pennies versus what you're going to get if he has a ball out season, and keep Tyson Campbell and just grab that third guy, make some competition. Instead of making holes, create competition and let these dogs fight it out, because that's what these are gladiators. Let them fight it out and figure out who's the best people, and you can make whatever moves you need to make in training camp if you want to trade somebody or get rid of them in that way. But I'm really curious about what the Chiefs are going to do with Snead, because I mean, if you did before that play happened, that was him knocking the ball out at the goal line to cause that Newton go to the Super Bowl. I thought, oh yeah, they're gonna let him go. I'm getting ready for this. That's gonna be the guy. That's gonna be the cornerback signing. And then he knocks the ball out, and I'm like, dang, this freaking guy, man. Like he's messing up all my plans. So I don't know.
And that's what I'm curious right now. Even like with the Cowboys, Zach Martin. Obviously, I think the Cowboys will get him under contract, or possibly not, because also Tyron Smith is up for a contract. So we got 2 offensive linemen that potentially 1 or 2 or both could be on the movement. So you might be able to snag one of those guys. Zach Martin, if you were to snag a Zach Martin, that would be a really good snag for you guys. I hope the Cowboys keep him, but with our cap situation, and some upcoming rookies coming up, who knows to say that they're not dispensable. So there's quite a bit of that out there.
The Cowboys, you guys do have a history of just having so many good offensive linemen that you've also have a history of getting rid of a lot of offensive linemen.
Well, we do, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
and the reason why though is because Jerry will only pay up to so much,
Right.
on those types of positions. Jerry only wants to pay for quarterbacks, wide receivers, running. Those are and maybe defensive players or whatever.
He wants the splash players. That's where
Exactly.
He has the good history, though. I got to give him credit on that. Like, as crazy as that man is, and some call me crazy. I mean, yeah, he is good in some ways, and he is a problem in some ways for you guys because he's good at building a general team. But he's
good in the draft.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, he's actually good in the draft. He amasses talent. There's no doubt. He just can't get it to play well together. But I mean, he amasses talent like any other good GM. And yeah, to your point, like he'll have so much talent on that offensive line. The guys he's letting go will start other places.
Right.
The second stringers that he's like, yeah, we're not going to pay you. It's like, cool. I'm going to go get starter money right over here. So, I mean, he definitely does that. I do have a Cowboys question for you, though, there, McLovin, is I'm not sure if you heard it, but former Vikings head coach Mike Zimmer wants to be your DC.
Are you trying to upset me today?
That is 100%
are you upset
what I was
because
doing
I
today.
said that Yahoo considered you spam? Is that where this is going? I can see where. No, I actually heard that too, and I really hope that does not come to. No, we're good.
Oh man.
You don't.
No, if you want to send me a Vikings coach, and I said this earlier, send me Brian Flores. I will take him, but please do not take me Zimmer. Please.
You know, there's also the outside chance that maybe Vrabel entertains it.
You know what? And I would even consider that, honestly, because I know where Vrabel and where he comes from under Belichick. So, people, all the stuff that happened in Tennessee, I'm really surprised Vrabel didn't get another nod at the coaching job. So, but if he wants to come in and do the defensive side of the ball with us and be the coordinator, I'm okay with that. Honestly, I'd rather have that than Zimmer.
The fact that he got fired was kind of crazy when you figure.
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy.
When you look at what he was trying to do with the roster he had. Right, like he was coaching them up. They were out there playing hard for him. So it wasn't like the team. He lost the team or anything, right? He just had old guys, right?
Well,
like
he and the GM had different opinions on how they should move forward from that point moving forward. Like apparently in the last draft they had some disagreements, but they came to agreement in that process. Right. And now they were having like one of those come to Jesus moments in the end of the season. It's just like, hey man, what are we going to do moving forward? I think we should do this and that we're not too far off. Or the GM saying, I think we should blow it up and start over or whatever. I'm not saying that's what they're saying. I'm just saying that's what happened because you don't fire that guy.
Well, you know what's interesting is I've even heard the rumor mill. Bo, I'm pretty sure you've heard this. The rumor mill is now that the Cowboys could be showing interest in Derrick Henry and D-Hop. And I don't know about that. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm okay with the Derrick Henry part because I do think that Pollard needs that, another running back to coincide with him to keep him from getting injury prone.
Well, he's a free agent anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like
I believe he is. I
think you lose Pollard because your cap space, your cap issues,
right?
No joke. Like I don't think you get to keep Pollard.
And that's really where they really need to be looking at Derrick Henry. If that's the case, because I think you can get Derrick Henry at a pretty decent price, honestly.
I think you can get him cheap,
right?
Yeah.
I don't think you go after D-Hop. I think you leave D-Hop alone. But we got Brandon Cook.
So it depends on how you're going to use him, because D-Hop, if he can make the transition into what Larry did, right, when he stopped being that outside receiver, essentially became that slot guy. Yeah. He extended his career. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame because of it.
Oh, no, I'm right there with you. I'm just thinking with the Cowboys cap, we're already 19 over, like Pags we talked about. Yeah. Our cap is not the greatest in the world. We are looking at having to possibly cut people. That's why I don't know if D-Hop is going to be that's good for us because of the cap number.
That's the thing is he's under contract for another year, so you could probably get Tennessee to carry some of that money. You give them
a draft. If they can do that, then that's fine. Yeah,
if you give them a fourth, right?
He has his contract had he was signed in this past season in Tennessee, but he has the 3 void years.
Yes.
So, and if you have those void years, you can just extend one of those out. All of a sudden, that 17 million cap number can be 6.
Whatever. Exactly.
Whatever you want to make it like reasonable, you make it 6 as long as you guarantee it for those 2 years. All of a sudden, you're talking that's pennies for a receiver. Like that's pennies for a third or fourth round receiver.
Well, especially if you don't use him as the outside guy, which you don't have to, right? You got CeeDee Lamb, and
I think you had it on point when you said slot.
Yeah, if you put him in the slot.
Yeah. Well, he did a lot of that in Tennessee.
No, for sure.
Like if you look at all of his highlights, a lot of those are when he's in the slot.
He needed a guy that could hit him in the hands with the ball. So, I mean, that didn't happen a lot in Tennessee. So, but if you go to the Cowboys, as much as I kind of clown on Dak because it upsets McLovin, is he can throw a fairly accurate ball, right? And so, if you had a D-Hop as a complementary piece to a guy like CeeDee Lamb, so he doesn't have to be the number one guy because he doesn't quite have that separation speed that he once had. So if you have him in the slot, is he beating a nickel corner or an outside linebacker all day? Absolutely.
I just don't understand what the Cowboys' problem actually is. And just me being honest with you. Like, I feel like you guys have the skill positions. You have a reasonably good quarterback. I'm not going to say this dude's great, but
Well, you watch. I know for a fact you watched the Cowboys versus the Packers, so you know what the problem was. It wasn't, like you said, it wasn't the talent. It was that play calling on the defensive side for the most part. Right? Because you saw those cornerbacks playing 5-10 yards off the wide receiver, not even attacking the line of scrimmage against them, right? You saw that when they did get there, like me and Bo were saying, that they became MIA. You couldn't even find them. I don't know how you play 5 and 10 yards off a receiver, and yet you're still not even anywhere to be around when the dude's getting the ball.
With the defensive line that you have, that's the biggest piece. The fact that you have that defensive front and you're still giving people space, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so what was crazy?
And let me ask you this, Travis: Why weren't we getting pressure on Jordan Love? Where was D-Law? Where was Michael Parsons? Where were all these guys? Why weren't we getting pressure on Jordan Love? If you watch Jordan Love, it looked like at one point he had a margarita in the left hand and throwing the ball in the right hand, man. And we still weren't even nowhere near around.
I mean, you knew exactly what they were doing. Sometimes those apps are hard to get through to book your flights to Cabo. Yeah. They keep timing out. The Wi-Fi is not great. I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
I have just opened
that was a play calling. It was a play calling fiasco for the Cowboys versus the Packers, right? And normally it's always the other way around. And usually it's the offense that was causing us problems in the playoffs.
Right.
This year it's the damn defense.
Right. Well, so you guys are talking about D-Hop. That's why I was asking the question. Like, I don't know how much more this offense needs, but I think the conversation should have been surrounding your defense. Like, what do you guys need?
There? Well, I think what their offense needs is to score every time they look at the ball. Because that defense is inconsistent. And in this playoff game, against Green Bay, this was some of the most mind-boggling tape to watch. Is they're playing off, right? Yeah. It looked like essentially they're playing like a cover 3. They're way off, right? Yeah. They're 10 yards off easily, and then somehow you're also beat deep. How does that happen?
Because they take a lot. Because in the way that they play. All right, so I'm a former DB, former graduate assistant DB coach. Like I'm here for DB play, and the Cowboys always. And I'm not saying this is not just this season. This has been for the last few seasons. Have been very good at guessing well. And what I mean guessing well, I mean you use your key traits. You're looking at the quarterback's eyes. You're playing a lot of zone coverage, and you're just reading the guys, or you're sitting on routes at that little 10 to 15 yard marker. Because that's why they're so good at either giving up touchdowns or pick sixes. Like a lot of the time, there's no in between. It's like either I'm gonna guess right, and when you guess right, I'm gonna score 7. Right. But when I guess wrong, I'm gonna give up 7. Right, and that's what it is. They're really good at that.
Look, this is a tale of two tapes. If you watch the Cowboys defense in the regular season, hands down we were top notch, elite. Then we get to the playoffs and we look like we never even played defense. So that's why I call it play calling, because this is not the same damn. Look, Bland is not having 6 or 7 pick sixes, 9 interceptions for this season, set an NFL record, only to go to the playoffs, and we can't find him.
Well, that's just it
No,
though.
you
Like
can't.
teams
That
play.
snack bar is no joke. Them nacho fries, man.
Hey,
I say it. I say it
hello?
every of. If I don't say it every week, I say it every other week. The NFL is such a matchup based like league that it makes it hard when you have these conversations, like, because it really can be just matchup by matchup. You're like, hey, the Cowboys defense was this during the season, and I'm like, kind of. Unless you take away this game, and this game, and this game, and then it's like, oh yeah, now that's what they were. But if you look at those games when they had to play those speedy receiver cores, they weren't doing a lot of that. Like they weren't doing a lot of that, and that's what happened with Green Bay. Is say what you want about that receiving core, they weren't incredible, but they were fast. And that's why the Cowboys were not going to play press man against them, because they didn't want them to run by them. But instead, all that happened is they played off them and got ran by because they kept guessing wrong. And it was just like on these double moves, on these out and ups, on these stuttering goes, et cetera, because they still guessed wrong. But it's for a whole different reason. They were scared of getting beat deep, and you can tell that they had that on the whiteboard all week. Like, don't get beat deep, don't get beat deep. And that's all that happened. They got beat deep. And that's really what it came down to. It's the matchups, though. It's not about the scheme in that way. It's just about those guys were scared of getting beat deep because you have a guy who runs maybe a 4-5 versus a guy who's running a 4-2 and a 4-3.
Well, I mean, the thing that was crazy about it, though, is if you're playing a zone, they didn't seem like they moved the zone at all. Like they camped out at that 10-yard mark, but then didn't go deep. So like when someone else ran deep, they're like, oh, bye. Like what? They're just like, I own the 10-yard square right here. This is where I live. If you go short, you can have it. If you go long, you can have it. You won't even find me in the frame when this dude is catching the ball.
Yeah, that's a lot of your well, again, that's a lot of your I want to say mishaps, miscommunications, busted coverages, whatever. And Jaguars fan, we've seen a lot of this. Like I know, yeah. If you're playing zone and you're playing a lot of zone and or match coverages, that's what's going to happen. I do a little curve to the inside. All of a sudden, I'm down the field, and I thought the safety picked them up. He thought I picked them up. He's out of the frame. No one's there. Touchdown.
I mean, look, this is the same team though that played against Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, and we almost beat them twice. We beat them once. We should have beaten them twice. So this defense is capable. You can't tell me that Packers offense is better than the Eagles offense. I mean, it's crazy to me that we can play them. Look, Devontae is not a slow guy. Neither is AJ Brown.
Well, let me ask you: didn't you guys have Bland following AJ Brown that game? Am I mistaken?
We did.
So that's the difference. You have him following the slower guy, the slower big body guy. That's what I'm saying.
But Devontae Smith ain't no. I mean, let's not make the Packers offense out to be this great.
I'm not making them great. I'm saying it's I'm saying if you get beat once,
the Cowboys made them great.
Bingo.
Hey, hush your mouth. Hush your mouth, folks. You over there sitting on the sidelines. You ain't got a dog in the fight.
So I'm not saying the Packers. I am a Matt LaFleur fan. He was our OC when I was at Northern Michigan University. So like I've watched them closely. So I can't speak as much about the Cowboys as I can speak about. I know what they saw on film because I've seen a lot of Packers game tape, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm saying is they knew that was a fast team and not just one of the guys in the way that Devontae Smith is like the fast guy for the Eagles. No, all of those guys are fast for the Packers, and that made it a little bit different. Like you're not having your slower corner follow the slower guy from the other team, who the big body, contested catch receiver for the other team. Now it's like all those guys can run by you. Then that's why I say you knew it was something that was on that whiteboard that week. Don't get beat deep because all those guys can beat you.
Well, it was funny though because it was such a different, like, not making fun of your team for a second. It was such a different game plan than what you are used to seeing out of the Cowboys. Like they literally came out, like you said, don't get beat deep. Like they came out kind of scared. So they weren't moving around the field on defense the way that you have come accustomed to seeing them move.
Right.
But basically that is exactly why I blame Dan Quinn on that, because he didn't get his guys ready. He didn't get his guys prepped. I mean, you can just see they were not ready for that game.
Anytime you get outside of what it is you do, like I never understand why coaches will go into the playoffs and then do everything that they didn't do in the regular season that got them to the playoffs, right? We watched this happen with the Ravens, right? They decided, hey, we're just never going to run the ball again. Or the Lions, right? Like the Lions, they did some uncharacteristic things for them, right? Now, they did things that didn't work that was 100% them, right? Like going forward on fourth and stuff. You know, people were losing their minds. Like, it's exactly who they are. I'm not mad at it at all. In fact, the plays should have worked. One of them hit the guy in the hands. So, I mean, that wasn't a calling thing. That was an execution thing. So,
yeah.
But when you see teams go in and they get away from everything that got them there, it's kind of like when you are on defense and you are beating a team and then they're like, oh, we're going to play prevent defense. If you've ever played a snap on the defensive side of the ball, you are mad as soon as that play calling decision comes in, because you're like, oh, we're going to let them get back in this game because now I'm not allowed to play defense. Use the things that get you there. So I don't know. For whatever reason, the Cowboys didn't use the defense that worked for them all season.
Well, I think that it depends on how good you are at doing the thing that you do. And in your example, you use the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm like, yeah, that was the best running team in the league. You don't change what you do like that. You screwed up there in not doing the thing that you are literally known for, that you are best in the league at doing.
Right,
but if you're a team that's top 10, top 12 at running the ball, I can see that maybe again matchup by matchup. You just have a situation where you just know the other guy is going to destroy your game plan. Cool, you make Aaron Donald, whatever. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, but you make them beat you first, right? Like, you can't abandon it before the game starts. Like, you got to get in, show them you can get shut down to play one-dimensional. You can't walk in one-dimensional.
Right.
I feel you. I think everybody wants to be that galaxy brain, though. Like, everybody wants to be that person that changed it up. Because again, Bill Belichick, they were known for this when they had Tom Brady. Like, they were known for literally having an entire game plan that was opposite of what they did the week before, or they had a game plan that was like legitimately just different than what they did all season. And all of a sudden, it's like, dude, it's like they just had a whole off season last week. Like, how do they implement this whole new offense in the span of 1 week? And it was just like those kind of things. Everyone wants to be that when it comes playoff time, because they know these teams that play mostly man all of a sudden going to become a major zone team just to throw us off. They're ready for that wrinkle, and it may or may not ever come. The galaxy brain, they're just overdoing it.
That was the issue I had with the Cowboys. I was so upset that they played this passive aggressive defense, and I'm like, no, man, get in there. Get in. Look, watch this. Hey,
see, you can't say stuff like that.
No,
you're setting up so many jokes.
The wide receivers. Hey, you know what I'm saying? The fact that they weren't bumping the wide receivers, the fact that they weren't attacking the line of scrimmage, that just they did nothing to disrupt the timing of Jordan Love, the receivers, or any of that. And I'm like, come on, why are you playing passive aggressive? This is bullshit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can appreciate.
I was wanting to suit up and go down there and say, "Let me pass the security. I'm here to play," because apparently they're not.
Well, they needed that secondary guy in the box. They wanted that guy in the box to stop Aaron Jones because they knew the Packers' engine ran through him, right? And they did a good job. And they did a good job stopping him earlier in the game. But then they never got a chance to get into those bump and run situations with having two safeties over the top, because they knew if they did bump and run, they were going to get run. Like I said earlier, they're going to get ran by. So they're just like they sacrificed one for the other, and no matter what, they guess wrong. They did. As a DC, they guess wrong.
And sometimes, even if maybe you give it a quarter of being aggressive, trying to disrupt the time and try to do that, and if that doesn't work, we make adjustments in the second quarter or whatever, and then we can try. But they didn't even try to make adjustments at any point throughout the game. It was the same defense all the way through, and they got their ass whooped all the way through.
No.
Make an adjustment for crying out loud.
They made adjustments. They bumped it up to first class.
Hey, watch your mouth.
This is one thing that's rarely. This is something that's rarely ever talked about, though. Like adjustments at halftime. Like, teams don't have a lot of time, as much time as people think they do, at least at halftime.
No, you don't.
Yeah, halftime's 15 minutes. Realistically, you have.
You got 5 minutes.
10. You have 10 to truly talk, but in reality, after you're doing anything you have to do medically, after the coaches actually have their individual meeting to talk about anything that they need to change, you have legitimately 4 to 5 minutes, like you said, max, to actually really talk to these guys and figure out what was happening, get them to understand what was happening, and then make any changes. Like, that's just not. And that's something that's rarely talked about, like in NFL circles, is the fact that some of those teams that are able to make changes, because they got some guys. They got guys who's doing this for 40 years, and they have the mind for a Bill Belichick. Like you could probably name 3 guys in the league that have like those real minds to truly change a defense and be able to effectively communicate it in that 4-minute time frame.
Well,
And come out in the half, doing something different.
There are also things that they watched on film going into that game. So a lot of times they'll have a game plan and they'll still implement some things that aren't necessarily in the game plan in practices that week. They're like,
they had it from earlier in the season. They had it from training camp, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's old film. They're like, hey, they haven't been doing this, but we've seen this before. We're going to run a couple of snaps of this because we may see it again. And so in that 5 minutes, they'll be like, hey, those things that we worked at, for that little bit of time during practice, we're going to run the defense that we used against that. Right. And now that does require the guys on your team to have a fairly high football IQ.
Bingo.
Right. Because they gotta remember those, those little things.
Those things from 2 months ago. Yeah. Those things from 2 months ago. And all of a sudden that becomes a check. All of a sudden that becomes a touchdown if I screw it up. Yes. They got to remember that.
Those wrinkles have been in place. So, I mean, that it definitely depends on your personnel, but yeah, to your point, like it's a coach that's been around a long time. It's like, hey, those wrinkles that we put in, 4 weeks ago, we're going to use some of those to try and combat because they're doing those things.
So that's why I consider someone like a Bill Belichick who's been in place forever, or someone like Spags, who even if they did have a rough defense last year, they kept them in place, and now that defense is looking great because they know the checks that they now had 2 full off seasons to implement, to talk about, to drill into these guys' heads. So when they see something that they're not used to seeing, they have the check in the bag. Like they have the option. They have that tool in their arsenal to pull out when they see something that was unexpected, because you're going to see that every week. And that's something that, again, we rarely talk about because there's just some coaches who maybe they haven't been there long enough. Maybe they just don't have the tools in the bag. Maybe they don't have the guys to do what they want to do. Like, and that sucks just across the board. So,
sure.
And then Mike Caldwell's case, that was one of Doug Peterson's issues. Mike Caldwell, former Jaguars defensive coordinator, that was one of his issues, that they weren't correcting a lot of things at halftime, or they weren't correcting them on the sideline. They would have to wait to after the game to correct a lot of things. And I'm like, I don't know if it's they didn't have the dogs or if they didn't have the tools in the bag to even correct those things because they hadn't talked about it beforehand.
Well, I mean, it's a problem if the guy running the show is a tool bag, right? Like, so, but no, I mean, honestly, that's one of those things where sometimes it requires the guy to have been there for more than a season, right?
Right.
Because you need
you hadn't come across the situation yet. Yeah, you just haven't come across the situation to even have the check.
Well, not just that, but you haven't come across that situation with some of the dudes that you have, right? Yeah. So even though you may have it, you can't call it, right? Because you've never called it because it didn't matter yet. And so some of those adjustments, even as the coach, you may see it. You'd be like, oh man, I've seen this before. 5 minutes isn't enough to rearrange my whole defense on something we've taken no reps on. Right.
I got you.
So you, at that point, you're going position by position. You're like, okay, you know what? I need, this guy has a double move, but he actually telegraphs it a little bit. So I want you to shade the numbers because you can force him to the outside. There's things that you can do, but at that point, it's not defense wide. Now you're talking directly to a guy. You're like, hey, when this guy lines up on you, if he's leaning real heavy on that inside foot, he's headed outside.
I got
right. And you can see it, right? Like if you played, like there's things you look at, right? Yeah. So, but
it's easier to make small corrections or small adjustments. It's easier to add a tag here or there to a defense. It's a lot harder to actually create an entire new playbook or scheme for in that 4 minutes.
Exactly.
This is not happening.
Whereas if you have, if you've been there for a minute and you got a lot of those same dudes, now all of a sudden you'd be like, hey, you guys remember that, you're playing whoever, but you're like, hey, remember this alignment that we ran against Tampa, right?
Yeah.
We're going to use that. We're going to use that today because of what Dallas is doing here. Right. So, I mean, there's things that you can do. But again, you need some time with those players, and you need those dudes to actually remember 4 weeks ago.
So all that to also make love and all that to say, good luck with your next DC, man.
Man, you're right, man. I mean, it is because I have no idea I mean, he's gonna have the right parts. At least whoever's coming in, they got the right parts. They just gotta. God, they need somebody innovative.
It's gonna be Zimmer.
Don't give me that same, just
for entertainment value.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, Spags is innovative, but they had a rough defense last year.
Sure.
Like innovative don't mean it's gonna be good next year. Innovative means he's gonna start to put the process together, and if you believe in it long enough, and let's be honest, the Cowboys are not exactly the office to generally have patience with coaches. I don't like. Would you even give your DC 2 years if he had a rough first season? If he's bottom the 29th defense in the league or something?
Oh, if you take this defense and go 29th, you're fired next year.
Oh, absolutely. You got too
many dudes. Yeah. That means you are bad at what you do.
You know what, Travis? You know what the bright spot is? It doesn't matter who we get. Because you know why? No matter what, boy over there in Eagle Land, he got Kellen Moore. Let that marinate for a minute. He got Kellen Moore.
I mean,
okay. Yeah. So give me a Zimmer. I'd rather have Zimmer than Kellen Moore.
He's gonna be gone. Yeah. Sirianni. I don't know how.
I mean, their DC.
Pags is so good at hiding I know Pags was angry, but he's not gonna let you know that he's. Ain't no way in hell Pags wants Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator. Ain't no way in hell.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do in Philadelphia. An owner who's already known for firing coaches pretty much since Andy Reid. If you don't have success moderately quickly, you're out of there. I mean, I don't see how Sirianni is going to survive next year unless they do something I just don't see them doing, like 10 wins.
I mean, when it's a question and the meltdown this year was insane, though.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was eerily similar to the Jaguars. It was eerily similar to the funk that the Chiefs had earlier in the season, but they came back from it. They legitimately just changed the way that they run their offense, and they became more of a run-friendly team and a defensive, powerhouse. I don't know what to call it. Yeah, they just switched up how they do things fully. Yep. And the Eagles and the Jaguars didn't, and that was the difference. Like again, you don't recognize this Chiefs team. They're just like, hey, we're gonna hold the ball. We're going to play ball control. We're going to just get to the end of the game, and then we'll use this mutant that we have and Pat Mahomes, and he'll win it at the end. Like that's how we're going to do it. We're going to shorten the game and then just get the ball at the end. We'll have a one-possession game, and Pat will win it first at the end. That's how we do.
I just wonder if the Cowboys should look at a position coach, maybe like a linebackers coach, defensive line coach, rather than looking at coordinators. Because most of the coordinators on the good teams, ones that have good teams, they're pretty much, either looking for a head coaching job. They're not trying to go to a coordinator spot necessarily. So I'm wondering if we should be looking at maybe the Baltimore Ravens linebacking coach or somebody of that nature and see if you want to bring them over.
Y'all want to take everybody from the Ravens. Goodness gracious. They're going to lose that whole, Lord. They've lost 4 coaches
it's
already?
It's the nature of the beast, brother. You only get those guys for a short period of time, and then they're moving on.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the Eagles are pilfering from everyone, right? Because they pick up Fangio as their DC, and then they bring in our DC from last year as their linebacker coach, and Clint Hurt. So I mean, they got a lot of dudes on that staff that were coordinators.
I mean, that can be good.
It
can be bad. Too many cooks in the kitchen. Too many. Exactly. But you have a lot of options on the table for your next head coach. I'll give you that.
I mean, if he gets fired, there's no doubt you can elevate from within.
They have a lot of good options for your next interim coach.
As you know, Jerry Jones has said we're all in. Well, if you're going all in. And literally, this is the last year for McCarthy's contract.
Yeah.
If they don't, the only way McCarthy keeps his job is if he makes it to the NFC showdown. If he don't get to the NFC showdown, that dude is so gone. And I'm good with that. Not only am I good with that, I'm probably going to order a bottle of champagne. I'm going to get butt naked and I'm going to run to the quad.
Wow.
By the way, if that's an old school reference. You've never seen the show Old School. That's
No. I've seen it, and for some reason, I could see you doing it.
So I know this is our first time. I know this is our first time on together, but I just want you to remember this date, February 2nd. When I say this, he won't make it to the end of the bye week next year.
That's interesting.
I don't believe it. I don't believe he will. I just don't. I think if they start the season off rough, it's going to be a problem. And because I know
Jerry's going to start panicking.
Bingo. Jerry's not the guy for patience.
And nobody wants to see Jerry Jones at 81 panicking.
If you have that many different types of leaders on your staff, and you built up that many guys who have leadership experience on your staff, it's going to be some chirping in the back. There's no way. Yeah, he will panic, and I'm sure of it.
Yeah,
and it might turn around,
especially because of this next year, right? After this season, they start losing talent. So, like for the Cowboys, this is their year to push the chips to the middle and try and do the thing.
And he would do anything he has to do to salvage that season because you have all those guys coming to the end of their contracts with the coach that's already at the end of the contract. And that's why I said I don't think he'd make that. Like he'd have to have an incredible. Let's say they have a week 7 bye week. They probably got to be, I don't know, 5-2, 4-3 is probably your bare minimum.
But you know, and the problem though with that, Travis, is this. It only works well if you want to jump ship from McCarthy midway, like you're talking about. Mm-hmm. If you have a strong coordinating group, we all know Brian Shanahan is not a strong coordinating group to come from, and I don't know who they're going to pick for the defensive side. But if they do what I want them to do is pick up a linebacker coach or somebody like that, a positional coach.
Oh man,
I don't know if I want to necessarily throw that guy into the mix. So I think we're kind of screwed.
That would make Zimmer so much better. Oh my God, I would pay money for this. Just the amount of dumpster fire that becomes. Holy hell, I want that to happen.
Dude, what happens if Zimmer's the interim coach and he actually like makes them play well? Right. Oh, what do you do with that? How much do you hate self-loathe right that? Oh, how much do I hate myself right now? Goodness.
Oh man. That would be
and that would
be fantastic too.
Yeah.
Like if he came in and they called out.
That very well could happen. That very well could happen because they need somebody with experience because God knows if McCarthy, like you said, does poop the bed, they need somebody that can lead the team. And God forbid, like you said, I hate to think about that.
Oh man. Honestly, I think that would actually be better if Zimmer came in and they balled out. Would be amazing because then you'd have to sign him, right?
I mean,
oh yes, please. Let's do that. That would be a fun story.
I'm here for all the drama. I'm here for all the drama, all the petty. Then that's great.
Wow, that would be amazing.
And then if McCarthy does go to the dumpster fire, let's say if you don't get a Zimmer, you know who I wouldn't even mind looking at is go talk to Pete Carroll and say, yo, Pete, what do you got? A couple of years? Why don't you come on down over here? I like Pete Carroll. And you know what? And as old as he is, the fact that he can run sideline to sideline and he don't even look like he's breaking his sweat. Yeah, come on, Pete. Let's go.
I do
he
like
has more
Pete.
Energy than your whole team.
What about Bieniemy? What is going on with him? Like I haven't seen anything with him right now.
The word on him is that he's interviewing more like a coordinator than he's interviewing like a head coach. And so I think that's really kind of hurting him a lot. And okay.
He's not leading guys. He's just talking about plays.
Yeah. I think sometimes you're just meant to be a coordinator. Sometimes.
Nothing wrong with that. If you're a good coordinator, some guys it's great to stay in your lane and just be great at that thing. That's
exactly.
That's not a problem.
Look at Josh McDaniels. Horrible head coach. Horrible. Great coordinator, though.
Legend at the bank.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Yep.
He is.
Sometimes you got to know where your spot is and just stay there.
Hey, Bo will tell you, I'm a fan of legends at the bank. As much as I shouldn't like them because they're terrible at their jobs, but hey, man, if somebody's willing to pay you that kind of life-changing lottery money and multiple times, and then you're bad at your job, hey man, I can't blame you. I blame them billionaires for being dumb. All right, cool.
Hey, you know, Travis, I asked Bo and I asked Pags this a little while back when all the head coaches were being hired and all the positions were being filled up rather quickly. Mm-hmm. And I said, a season ago, everybody was up in an uproar with the lack of minority hiring at the head coach position. You remember all the controversy that went throughout the NFL. And then I watched this year unfold, and it was like 5 out of 7 or something like that was minority-based hiring. And it was almost the opposite.
I thought there was only 3 head coaches this go around.
No, it was 5. It was up to 5. Last time I counted, it was up to 5.
Oh wait, up to 5 in the league, or up to 5 hired in that cycle?
In that cycle.
Oh dang. Yeah. I thought there was only 3 this time.
I don't have all the names right off the rip, but it's
okay.
If you go look at it, it's like roughly 5.
Even if it was 3 or 5, that's still way more than it was. Like we're good there.
So it looks like I was telling them, I was like, do you think that the NFL, is getting away from what we used to call the good old boy system and actually hiring or looking outside of and more into the minority base and actually getting the right guy for their job and not necessarily the other way around?
I'm not willing to say that just yet because I know history too well. That I just don't feel comfortable based on a year of data when we have, I mean, how many? Realistic, we have a couple of tens of years, a couple of decades of examples to pull from at this current moment in time. I mean, and we have recent examples also of some systematic issues. So I'm not willing to say that just yet, but it's positive. It's a positive change for sure to see how many we even have in the pool of people who didn't get hired yet. There's like 7 or 8 like legitimate candidates who could have been hired in this cycle, and I think 3 or 4 of those are minorities. Even in like you have the guy from the Carolina Panthers, and so in just in saying all that to say like there's some guys who have their eye on the future that could absolutely be hired also. So I'm not willing to say that it's changed, but I'm also saying it's a positive change that could potentially show that there has been something going on. And I also don't know what the hell's going on with this current lawsuit against the NFL. That can have something to do with it because we don't know where they are in discovery. Finding text messages and everything else. Maybe these billionaires out here like, no. How the black dude? Yeah, that'll take the heat off. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know what they're finding right now.
Right?
Hey, question.
Totally could be that CIA.
Hey, question. Seriously, for both of you guys, because I was thinking about this the other day too, and I could not remember, and I meant to research it, but I didn't get around to it. Has there been a minority coach of the year in the NFL?
Oh, so you just mean like out of all the coaches of the year, have any of them been?
I'm just saying in general, just in the NFL in general. Has there been a coach of the year in general over the history of the NFL? Has there ever been a coach of the year?
I'm sure that has to be a
Lovie
coach
Smith
of the year
wasn't he?
Was Lovie Smith? Was he a coach of the year?
I think won. And the only reason it comes to mind is he won coach of the year and then was fired the next year, which is like a weird turn of events.
Yeah, you got Marvin Lewis, Cincinnati Bengals, 2009. You got Mike Smith, Atlanta Falcons, 2008. Lovie Smith, 2005, Chicago Bears. So we got a few. Like we getting back there. I don't know about recently though.
And the only reason that popped to my mind is because I thought Dable might go that route where he wins coach of the year and then gets fired. I was like, I wonder if that ever happened. And so I had looked it up, and Lovie Smith is the only one that has had that happen, where he won coach of the year and then was fired the subsequent year.
Yeah, because Mike Vrabel got coach of the year and got fired 2 years later.
Yeah. Well, but I was curious if it ever happened the next year, and it was only Lovie Smith. At least in football. It happened once in basketball too, I think. But.
So yeah, it hasn't happened since 2009, Marvin Lewis. But
because we were talking about this the other day, I really feel like I think D'Amico's going to get it. I think
D'Amico should get it.
D'Amico should get it, man. Yeah. And I'm mad about I'm mad about all of it. Their general manager. I'm mad about because I'm a Jags. I don't just cover the team. I'm also a fan of the team. I was born and raised in Jacksonville, so I'm like that's my squad. I'm just blessed to be able to cover. Right. And it sucks because I'm like I actually am, as a fan of the sport, have confidence in the Houston Texans front office and coach.
Exactly.
And I don't like that I have confidence in what they're doing because that means my team is going to be in trouble. Like,
well, I mean,
it is taking a long time for the Texans to really get that team under control.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it the whole way.
Yeah,
I enjoy them being a train wreck because my team was actively a train wreck at the same time.
Yeah, I remember when Bob Lanier. And was it Charlie Casserly? I think was the general manager, the first general manager. And they had a press conference as the introduction of the team. Of course, the team, and this is even before they even had the draft lottery or whatever that they got to pick from.
Yeah.
And it was in this hotel or whatever, and I went to it, and Bob Millennier stands up. He's like, "Yeah, we're going to be so calculated on everything we do. It's going to be well thought out. It's going to be proportionate. It's going to be this. It's going to be this." And then you see the actual what they do, and it's just like, bro, I don't know what y'all were kind of smoke y'all were blowing at this press conference, but y'all didn't do any of that. I mean, it was so bad. Even their first pick, Tony Baselli, never even saw the field. But yet that's how methodical they were. And I knew when they picked Tony Baselli, I looked at my dad and I said, yeah, this team is going to be garbage for a long time.
Baselli was good, though. So that's the
he was
he's
good, but he was injured. And we knew he wasn't going to play. He was never going to play for them. But yet they took him anyway.
So is that bad that you pick a guy who ended up being a Hall of Famer? Give me a second. Let me say this because I'm like, I don't know.
Horrible right now. That is terrible.
How bad are you can you at least argue that some of that got to go on coaching, some of that could potentially go on the medical staff? Because you can argue as a GM, this is my resume. That guy went to the Hall of Fame. I might have been wrong on when he would be available, but I was right on the player, if that makes sense.
No, you could make that argument.
And I'm drafting, and I'll tell you why it doesn't make sense. I'm drafting. I know Tony Baselli's medical history. Mm-hmm. I know if I take Tony Baselli, he will never take the field. It was on a wish and a prayer. I swear to God, that's what they said. It was on a wish and a prayer that Tony Baselli will ever see the field. So you literally are telling me I'm going to draft a guy only to watch him go into the Hall of Fame, but never play one down for me. This is the guy I'm going to pick for my team. That just sounds ridiculous in so many ways.
I got you. I'm just throwing out the devil's advocate side of that.
Said what you said, but you got me now, so we're good.
I got you. I was just trying to understand it because I was like, I mean, if I'm a GM, I'm going to take some issue with that. I'm going to be like, nah, man, I'm adding this. I'm adding this as a check mark on my resume.
Yeah, it's only a good thing if he actually plays, but they knew he was never going to play. Well, they knew through his medical records he was never going to play.
I mean, they had to have thought there was an outside chance.
Right. My Jaguars drafted Walker Little.
No, you're right. That's how they spotted at the press conference. At the press conference, that's exactly what we fully think that Tony Baselli is going to take the field. And then it came out later on, they knew that he was never going to take the damn field. He was garbage. He was done.
Dang. Well, Hall of Famer Tony Baselli for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we say thank you, Houston Texans, for being train wrecks, permit loving as far as how you picked them.
It would be like if they came into the league right now and they said, "Okay, our first pick is going to be Alex Smith."
I mean,
from the Washington Commanders. Okay, you knew damn good well Alex Smith. Even if he did play, it was going to come up for one snap, and he was going to call it a career.
Oh, man.
I'm just saying. It's the same damn thing.
I mean, he didn't have a horrible year coming back.
Well, now I'm even more confused. I'm like, wait a minute. Because Baselli was drafted by the Jaguars.
Yes. Yeah, he was. He played. Didn't he? I'm pretty sure he played his whole career for the Jaguars. I don't think he played for anybody else. Other than when he went to the Texans in the expansion draft.
Yeah. Well, he's still a Hall of Famer.
And this is hey, watch this. Hey, you know what? And
I like that.
Travis, come on here as a Jaguars person, and he don't even know about Tony Baselli.
That is priceless.
Oh man.
I love you, Travis. But where do we find these guys? Where are we thinking from over here? I'm giving Travis a hard time. I'm gonna be quiet before he beats me up.
Nah, man, it's fine. I haven't boxed since college. It's fine.
With you. You look like you lift weights.
Nah, I don't
even know what you bench, but I bet it's more than what I'm doing.
Maybe used to, but nah, the expansion I don't even know anything about that one. When the expansion draft, I'm like, dang, all right.
I think that expansion, God, it's been a while. You know, the Texans have been in the league for a while, but it doesn't seem like it, but they have. I think they're going on, what, 20 years now? I mean,
the Texans and the Jaguars, I thought had a team at the same time.
Oh, no, you guys came in before we did. That's for them, or they did, I should say.
Well, you say we. I'm like, I thought you were Cowboys.
I am a Cowboys fan. Don't get me wrong.
Sometimes. That's why we call them bandwagon.
You just like everything. You like everything Texas.
Pags out
hey, you know that setup was way too easy.
It was way too easy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so everything Texans. That's what it is. Yes. So no, yeah, it was in 2002. So you're right. So it was a little bit after the Jaguars.
Yeah.
Like 5-7 years.
There's a reason why it doesn't seem like it's been that long, because they've only been in primetime games for like half of those.
They've been
well, I mean, you're not wrong.
So actually, before we run out of time here, there has been some rumblings in the Jaguar action that they may get an extra game, start getting an extra game potentially in Europe. And as much as I like busting you up about them moving to Europe, this could be a step in that direction. There's been rumors of two away games and a home game.
It's not two away games and a home game. It's supposed to be 2 games with one of them being an away game.
No. I know. Game. No, they're saying in the future, not this year. They're saying in the future.
Okay.
They might make it so that you then have 3 games over there.
Well, that makes sense because they were talking about that being one of the options while the Jaguars were getting their stadium worked on. So from the Jaguars' perspective, well, you get an extra 50% of your revenue coming from whenever the games are in London. So I can understand if your argument is, hey, this is an away game anyways, and I can increase my revenue 50%.
Yep.
While I'm getting my stadium worked on. Cool. Like that's a great option in that situation. But if you're talking just in general going
you're
forward,
have to go on vacation.
Yeah, if you're talking in general going forward, that's another conversation though. If you're just talking like full forever, signing a 10-year contract like they did originally with London, like going over there for away games twice, you might have some fans that's a little bit pissed off about that.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting because if you start doing it, right? I could see the league.
I'm waiting till you finish that sentence. Come on.
I could see the league doing some shady stuff like that and just kind of sneak that in there.
No one's moving to London, man. It's never going to happen.
Have you seen your stadium? I had the luxury of living in Savannah. And I went to the Jaguar Stadium while I lived in Savannah a couple of times. And I will tell you this, it is horrible.
Hey, man, watch your mouth. Watch your mouth.
I mean,
all right. Hey, I still box. Hey, man, watch your mouth. All right, come on.
It's a horrible stadium. It's flat out horrible.
You're not wrong, but that's obviously a reason why we were having a conversation about
the
stadium
only thing that's more horrible than that is the meniscus tear of Joel Embiid. By the way, can we get a moment of silence for his meniscus?
And it's funny because that is a conversation we're going to have Monday for sure.
Oh, I know. I just want to throw a preamble for
NBA's new 65-game rule.
I got you. Oh, Lord. All right. I'm going to let you guys kill that. But just FYI, nobody's moving to London because the tax applications are too crazy, and they're never going to give them a waiver for taxes.
But how does it make you feel that your team is being pimped out to another city?
I mean,
they're so terrible. You're being pimped out, man.
I think they're doing the pimping. What you mean? One's being pimped. If anybody's being pimped.
Have you ever noticed that teams that play in Europe or whatever, they're always typically, for the most part, are just garbage time teams? I mean,
are the Buffalo Bills a garbage time team?
Well, no, I didn't say all the time.
No. You said they play the most
of the time.
The Jaguars play the most games in Europe, but the Buffalo Bills have played the second most. So what is that saying? Your argument falls apart.
No, it really doesn't.
Actually,
it really doesn't. Can I tell you why? Can I tell you why it doesn't fall apart?
Okay.
Can I tell you why? Because they are pretenders.
Ooh.
Okay, but the other element of that is
they look so damn good until it comes theirs, don't they?
The bulk of the Bills was early in that. So the Bills actually weren't very good then. Because when you look at the Bills' total number of Europe trips, like when they were going a lot was.
All right, so you're thinking of when they signed the contract when they were bad, and now they're good, so they wouldn't re-sign. That is your argument, basically.
No. I'm just saying that if you were saying they're garbage time teams that are going there, when they were doing the bulk of their travel, they actually weren't a good team. So it actually kind of fits that narrative. I'm not saying they wouldn't, because I mean it's good money to go. So.
Right. And that's what it comes down to. If you can play an away game and a home game, and from your perspective, you're losing just one home game, and you can increase your revenue. And this is this is about money. Like, that's the conversation.
About money. It really is.
Especially like in that scenario, I actually kind of like being there the 2 weeks, have a home and an away game.
Right.
I mean, that way you don't have all that travel 2 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So
if I'm a fan base of that team, though, honestly, if I'm a fan base of that team, I don't want my team going to Europe. I want to see all their games. Don't take my games away. I want to see all the games.
It's
if
still
you're a
on
fan,
TV. You're not flying all around the country chasing your team.
Yeah, if you're a fan who's willing to fly to California from Florida,
Oh, yeah,
then you're willing to fly to
Coach
London from
Locatelli
Florida.
down there in Povertyville is going to have the money to go see a game out there in London.
No, I'm saying you're not going.
You must not know about. You must not know about the Jaguars fan base because them boys travel.
Right. We're actually out of time. Travis, tell everybody how they can find you.
You can find me at McLovin's house beating him down for talking about my team right now. That's where you can find me. But otherwise, you can find me at bigcatcountry.com. You can find me on Tuesdays at Inside the Pigskin with Bo. And also on Fridays, the Duval Dive Jaguars podcast. But I appreciate you having me, brother.
Of course.
Go ahead, knock yourself out.
All right. See you guys on Monday.
Yes, sir.